Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your audio amigo, here today with another episode of the Planar Project. Today we're looking at what is, at time of writing, the cheapest at MSRP and newest planar IEM. This is the SGOR Luna, the third IEM from relative newcomers SGOR. They've been around for 3 years and have essentially released one IEM a year. They started with the Venus in 2022, the Adonis in 2023, and now the Luna here in 2024. This is priced between $38 and $44, depending on if you want a USB C dongle and a microphone or not. The dongle adds $4 to the price, and the microphone adds $2. That pricing makes it a shot straight across the bow of the KZ-PR2, and it puts the Artti T10 on notice. So, is this an actual market shakeup, or is it just another poorly tuned budget planar to add to the pile of disappointment? Let's find out. So we'll get started with what's inside the box. The unboxing experience is your standard budget IEM unboxing experience. If you saw my unboxing though, I feel like the box and the inside foam the IEMs are held in is a step above KZ's usual presentation. But anyway, inside the box you get the IEMs themselves, you get the cable, you get 3 sets of silicone ear tips, you get small, medium, and large. The medium come installed already on the IEMs. And because I paid the extra $4, mine came with a dongle DAC. So this is a Connexent CX31993 DAC chip paired to a 97220 amp chip. Dongle DACs with this configuration typically sell for between $8 and $15 on AliExpress or Amazon. Considering they're charging it as a $4 add-on here, I feel like this is totally worth it. It has nice SGOR branding on the USB C connector, and it's a nice 6-wire braided twist to accommodate the microphone option. Yeah, like I said, I think this is a great $4 add-on, and it has enough juice to power the Luna nice and loud. I don't have detailed equipment to measure or provide, detailed measurements on the dongle itself, but I didn't notice any extraneous noise or distortion while using it in my tests. Overall, I feel like this is a decent accessories package. Would have liked to have seen some tips or a carry pouch, but I think this works, especially with the value add of the $4 dongle. Moving on to the cable. It isn't amazing, but it isn't bad either. It's miles better than the typical cheap KZ Tagliatelle cable. It's a nice 2-wire twist with a rubber coating. It does feel a little bit rubbery, but it doesn't stick or drag on the skin, which is good. There's SGOR branding on the 3.5mm connector. Quick note here, during my testing, when I had this plugged into my desktop amp, see if I can get it to do it here, the sleeve on the connector, there you go, came off once. And now this is sort of what happens every time I plug it into a heavier amp, is when I go to grab the stainless steel part to pull it away from the amp, it separates, and that's not good. It's fairly common now, so the sleeve is just loose now. That's a potential point of failure, so just keep an eye on it. It doesn't affect the sound, because obviously the soldering is all on the inside, but something to keep an eye on. There is no branding on the rather slim-looking Y-split here. It's just your fairly generic stainless arrangement. There's also no chin slider. Okay, that's probably to save costs for the version with the microphone and inline controls, which as you can see, mine does not have. The ear hooks are pliable and soft, maybe a little rubbery, but they feel fine in the ears as far as I'm concerned. There's a QDC connector on these, so be aware, keep that in mind if you're going to upgrade the cable. But honestly, other than that issue with the connector, tip coming off, I wouldn't upgrade this cable. I think it feels pretty good for the money. Like I said, miles better than something included on a KZ set or some other competitors. Yeah, just keep an eye out on that sleeve coming off of the connector and potentially breaking something. So let's talk about the build quality. I believe these are molded resin shells with cast aluminum top plates that they then, polish, ground, and plate. There are 2 vents here. One is right over the driver, and the other one is on the top plate down here, closer to the point of the IEM. The nozzles are brass with what looks like a very fine tuning mesh inside. Those black marks came from the factory like that. It's not because of something that I put there in use. It doesn't seem to affect the sound any. Overall, these feel, pretty solid, but very well built for this price range. You can see some of the glue. See if I can show it up on the camera. There it is. You can see some of the glue holding the nozzle in, and it doesn't seem to go evenly all the way around. Yeah, there you go. That's better. It shouldn't really be an issue. The aluminum plates typically help IEMs like this with the QDC connector snapping the top plate. I don't see these really falling apart unless you abuse these. I think it's good construction overall for the price point. Let's go ahead and pull up the specs. So these are powered by a 13mm planar driver. I'll talk about the driver in a second because I actually think it's pretty interesting the way it's designed, at least based on their marketing pictures. We've got under 100 sensitivity, which is rare for IEMs. I think I only have 6 IEMs in my collection, including this one, with under 100 decibels per milliwatt of sensitivity. Thankfully, the impedance is 37 ohms, which is about average for my IEM collection. The Apple dongle that I use as a benchmark for volume testing will get these to about 110 decibels peak, which is plenty for me, but you might want to invest in a small dongle in case your source doesn't have enough juice. The optional $4 dongle is honestly perfect for this. I recommend you grab it unless you already have a dongle that you prefer or have a powerful source. The nozzles aren't too big or too small. I think they should be good in terms of comfort, and as far as weight goes, these are a little bit on the heavier side for budget IEMs, but again, nothing too terrible. But let's take a second and talk about that driver. At first, I thought this was using the driver from the KZ PR series IEM, the PR1, the PR2, the PR3, but it has a sort of showerhead-looking grill on it that makes it resemble the 3rd gen driver that Lecturer uses on the S15 of all things. Now, I'm not Michael Bruce or any of these other guys who tear down IEMs to check out drivers. I have the gear to do it, just not the money to be, destroying IEMs for science. That being said, I do know that there's only 1 or 2 factories that make these planar drivers for IEMs, and I think that this is a sort of special version of the 13mm driver that Lecturer is using in the S08, the new 4th gen model. The back volume resonating chamber, I'll put up some pictures, looks very similar on the Lecturer picture as it does here on the Luna. The magnet carriers also look similar, even though they appear to be made from a different material. The biggest difference, however, is in the diaphragm itself. Lecturer is using a double-sided voice coil created with a vapor deposition technology, and the diaphragm is also surrounded by a PTR elastic film to improve rigidity and stiffness. SGOR, on the other hand, is using a single-sided voice coil that's created with the traditional etching process, and it isn't employing a diaphragm surround system. If I had to make a guess, and this is 100% a guess, I would say that the driver for the Luna is being made in the same factory as a driver for the S08, but to a different spec using some different parts. Sorry for the extended driver talk, kind of a transducer nerd. I hope some of y'all enjoyed it. But now it's time for the cool wall. I mentioned this in the unboxing video, but I really dig the looks of these. The black version looks like an in-progress solar eclipse, similar to what Simgot did on the SuperMix 4. It works there. I think it works really well here. The silver variant, which I'll put a picture up here, isn't bad. It just doesn't have the same, cool midnight moon vibes as the black version does. I feel like if they hadn't put this, machined ring with the concentric circles in the middle, I feel it would just feel like a slightly more upmarket KZ set, but since they did do that, I'm going to put this in cool. Like I said, I like those machined concentric rings. It's a nice touch. It's interesting, I think, that they cast the top plate and then machined it. It saves cost, but it still makes for a nice feeling finish in the hands. Good job. It won me over, but let's see if it wins over the discerning and sometimes unfair tastes of the Council of Ladies. Ooh, this is a good start. Looks like we only have 1 meh in the bunch. It's looking pretty good for the Luna. There's a less than favorable 3-to-2 split against giving compliments for these, so don't count on these to impress too much. As far as color choices go, black edges out silver 3-to-2. I can agree with that. And finally, here are their thoughts. Sleek, elegant, stylish. I agree with the black cable comment. I think a black cable with the black shells would actually make these really pop and look kind of unique. So yeah, that's the Council of Ladies. So moving on to comfort. These shells are a bit on the larger side. You would definitely feel these sitting in your ears, but thanks to the light weight, I didn't have any issues wearing these for long gaming sessions. They fit the contours of my ear pretty well with these, bulges, that little wing there. And while they don't disappear into my ears, they aren't uncomfortable for me either. I was absolutely positive that these were going to fail the tiny ears test because of their enormous size, but they actually passed. She says that, yeah, the shells are comically large, and they're big in her ears, but she could 100% wear them. They fit the contours of her ear well, and the combination of the nozzle size and length with the, actually she said, pretty comfy ear hooks meant that she could wear them for quite a long time. It was easy for her to form and maintain a seal. I'm not going to say these are good for all small ears, though. I'm going to say that your mileage may vary with these depending on your ear shape. The large shell size won't be for everyone, but they fit me and my wife okay. All right, let's get into how these sound. So, in the lower frequencies, we have a nice representation of what I've been calling planar bass, okay? The sub bass has a decent amount of rumble to it, and the mid bass has a pretty satisfying boost. The bass line in the sort of chorus of Martin Garrix's The Only Way Is Up, featuring Tiesto, has a good bass emphasis to it. It makes for a punchy, energetic playback. In a similar vein, the bass line in Dire Straits' Sultans of Swing doesn't get muffled behind the rest of the band like it can do in some other sets that are sort of bass light. It's very clear in the mix. The different amounts of force, volume, and ringing that each note on the bass has is presented to you accurately here. This level of bass emphasis might be too much for people who prefer a leaner, more natural sound, and in a similar way, I think bass heads will also be disappointed there isn't more of a mid-bass or sub-bass boost here. I personally think it's very well done. I think it's fast, articulate bass that replays music very well. So mid-range, typically with planars, you don't have to worry about paying as big of a tonal penalty if you boost the mid-bass, and for the Luna, that actually holds up pretty well. There isn't any masking in busy tracks like Tom Petty's Runnin' Down a Dream. The drums, the bass, the guitars, the vocals, they all get their own space in these. You don't lose out on details when they're all playing at the same time or all together on top of each other. The acoustic guitar strums in the chorus especially sound really great in both ears. Some good subtle details like the sharper tones when the fingernails are hitting the strings. Tom's vocals aren't touched tonally in any way, either in a positive or a negative. This set also doesn't color female vocals any. Norah Jones's Don't Know Why is a great track, and her vocals are a great litmus test of any added tonality. Her very wide vocal range will show you any nasal tonality in the upper registers and any huskiness or darkness in the lower registers. And there's not a lot of bad or off tonality here. I think it's fair to say that this set does her voice justice. It doesn't overemphasize the vocals like some people might like, but overall I feel this is a very good, balanced mid-range presentation. Okay, here we go. The range that seems to be make or break for so many planars. We'll go ahead and get started with the female vocal harmonics in the upper mids and treble. Mecano's Hijo de la Luna is a vocal showcase of Ana Torroja's vocals. Between her Spaniard lisp and the airy tone that she adopts while she's retelling this legend in the song, there's a lot of upper harmonic magic, if you will, going on here. And that's before we even take into account the tambourines and the bells in the background. The harmonics here are mostly natural. They decay well and don't linger too long or suffer from any added washiness or nasal tonality. I will say I did notice a bit of wobbliness to some of her longer sustained notes. Some of the notes where she adds some vibrato, the vibrato-ness, the waviness of it, maybe felt a little bit exaggerated compared to some other sets. Nothing too bad, nothing that outright ruins the playback, and I think the vocal presentation here is overall still very great, but I did notice it, so I have to point it out, even if, I or some other people would consider it a nitpick. As far as percussion harmonics go, I was pleasantly surprised again. There's good energy in the upper treble, but not enough to make it hurt. The cymbals in Ram Jam's Black Betty didn't hurt at higher volumes like they can on some other planar sets. They had good texture, they had a good wash, they decay naturally. You can hear the differences between the bell and the outer edge of the cymbal. I did encounter a similar issue like with the vocals, where some of the hits can sound, for lack of a better word, a little bit wonky, where it's a little bit, vibrato-y, but then again, it's not a huge deal. Overall, the upper mids and treble are well done, just a tiny bit of unevenness that, isn't great, but it also doesn't ruin the replay, and I think it's generally very well done. Moving on to technicalities, as far as the low end goes, this set passed my Steely Dan Black Cow test. They add some reverb over the whole track, but specifically if you listen to the opening bass notes, you get this echoey bass note that buzzes and bounces off the walls in the studio in a way that isn't always picked up well. This set replays it well. Some sets with overblown bass, you can get the echo going in both ears like crazy. This is nice right in the middle, not overblown. You can still actually hear it though. On the upper end of the scale, I listened to Roy Clark's absolutely fantastic rendition of Malagueña. The version specifically I listened to was the one that he played live at Billy Bob's Texas on a 12-string Ovation guitar. So it combines that unique round-backed plastic guitar tonality with the extra harmonics of having 12 strings. This is one of my favorite versions of this song, and the Luna does, in my opinion, very well in resolving all of the subtle little nuances and details of this performance. Everything from the way he mutes the strings with his fingers as he's picking, to the subtle way that he strikes the soundboard on certain strummings. The most iconic moment for me here is the way that he pulls at the strings around 5 minutes, 15 seconds in. There's so much ringing and buzzing from the strings going on all the time. He's striking the soundboard for effect, and the Luna does great playing it back. Like most Planars, I think this is an absolutely great technical showing, especially at this price. In terms of stereo separation, it's also pretty good here. The Mediterranean Sundance test that I do passed with flying colors. Al and Paco are each in their own ears. They give him plenty of space. The recording doesn't feel closed in or claustrophobic. As far as the perceived 3D soundstage goes, there's enough low-end energy and high-end energy to convey some depth in well-mastered tracks. I'm going to use Waltz for Debbie by the Bill Evans Trio because you can clearly picture Bill to your front right, Scott to your back left, and Paul right behind you for some great perceived 3D soundstage. Overall, I would say really good stereo separation and a above average perceived 3D soundstage for these. All right, time for some comparisons. So this is going to be another decently long section, so please bear with me. This set to me sounds like a sort of slightly warm V-shape. As I mentioned before, this set, in my opinion, is sort of a shot across the PR2's bow, and so we'll go ahead and start with that one. The KZ PR2 at an MSRP of $45. Talking about price, at MSRP, the most expensive version of the Luna with the dongle and the microphone is still $1 cheaper than the cheapest version of the PR2. The cheapest version of the Luna without the dongle or the microphone is $7 less than the PR2. So I'm going to be comparing the cheapest version of the Luna with all of these for fairness. Right off the bat, the Luna has a much nicer cable. It has punchier bass. I would say the build quality is similar, but the treble on this is much less piercing. The drivers, I would say, are similar in quality with similar overall resolution and detail, but, the tuning overall on the Luna is just much more accessible than it is compared to the, let's call it, shrieking brightness of the PR2. Add in the fact that, at least as of right now, it just launched, okay? There's only one version of the Luna on the market, and when you order it, you know what you're getting when you buy it. Something that you can't really say for the PR2 and its multiple stealth revisions. I have never heard the PR2 the way it was intended to be sold, so I can't compare it with the original tuning, but I will say that in my opinion, with the Luna on the market, there's basically not that many reasons to get a PR2, unless you really like that really bright, shrill, energetic treble presentation, or you're a collector who's trying to grab all of the HBB collabs. So moving on to the other budget planar in this roundup, we have the TRN Rosefinch, also at $45. Quick disclaimer on the Rosefinch. I have not had the greatest luck with this set. The first pair that I got in had horrendous channel imbalance in the treble. There was a 5 to 6 dB difference between 2 and 5K, and it just sounded completely off. So sent it back, got a replacement set, and that's the one I have here, which also has pretty bad channel balance issues. There is I'll put up the graph, there's a 10 dB difference at 20 Hertz that sort of closes in at around 300 Hertz, which means the entire bass region is out of balance. There's also a region between 2 and 4K that peaks out at almost 3 dB of imbalance, so clearly build quality is a concern with the Rosefinch. My other concern is the tuning. Now keep in mind I'm listening on an imbalanced set, so some of this might be, your mileage may vary. But this is what sounds like to me the most V-shaped tuning I've seen in a planar. You've got some of the most boosted mid-bass I've experienced with very boosted shrill upper treble. And if you combine that with the quite recessed mids and vocals, you've got a pretty confusing listening experience. Let's call it unique, at least to my ears. The Luna has more natural bass. It has a better mid-range presentation. It has better treble. It's cheaper. I just think it's an overall better value. I do really like the cable on the Rosefinch, okay? It is modular, so you can swap this connector out, but they don't include the other terminations in the package. You have to buy them separately. The other good thing about the Rosefinch is it does come with 3 separate types of tips to try out if you want to try tip rolling. So the accessories package here is, I would say, the best of the 3, but because of the build quality issues and other things, I wouldn't really recommend it over the Luna. So if we're going to keep going with planars, we got to move up in price. Next up, we've got the Kinera Celest Pandamon 2 at $65. Put it right here. Depending on who you ask, the Pandamon 2 isn't a true planar. It's using Kinera's square planar driver, which I'll talk about in my review video for this one. But we'll go ahead and count it as a true planar for this roundup. This is another, let's say, interesting tuned IEM. It's tuned to be sort of neutral with a vocal focus, but I feel like it's lacking in overall bass energy and low frequency rumble. And while it has good vocals and vocal harmonics, the wash and decay on cymbals is quite unnatural. It decays very quickly, and the detail resolution isn't that great. The Luna isn't as good in terms of female vocals as the Pandamon is, but it's better than the Pandamon in terms of bass quality, bass quantity, treble harmonics, overall detail. I don't think the Pandamon 2 is that competitive at MSRP to begin with, and the Luna at $38 just kind of makes it look a little bit silly in my opinion. So before we get to the elephant in the room, I wanted to compare the Luna with some non-planar IEMs, and I found one that I think actually fits the Luna pretty well. This is the Simgot EW200 Maze at $40. The tuning on this is actually quite similar to the Luna. The Luna isn't as bright as the EW200. And when listening side by side, I think these two actually trade blows fairly well. Like I said, the Luna is a little bit darker with a faster, more articulate, more detailed bass. The Maze is brighter and smoother in the treble, with the finer details being a bit more forward and noticeable. I'm not saying it's more detailed than the Luna. I think the Luna actually has similar overall resolution and detail retrieval, but the details are just not as forward or emphasized as they are on the EW200. Now that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your preferences. I'm just going to say they're more forward. Both of these are actually really good for the price. The Maze and this are essentially the same price, but this comes with a carry pouch. That said, I think the Luna is a bit more palatable to people who might be a bit treble sensitive. Out of all the non-planar sets in this price range, I think the EW200 is the closest non-planar analog to the Luna. Which is why I brought it out here. And yeah, I think this set's getting a lot of hype. A lot of people really like it. And I think that it being compared well, the Luna comparing well to it is a good thing. But all right, I've teased it long enough. It's time for the set that everyone wants to see compared to the Luna. This is the Artti T10 at an MSRP of $75. Right off the bat, the T10 comes across to me as a more refined version of the Luna. You've got better sub-bass extension, a bit more of a vocal focus, and a similarly detailed treble region. But we expected this, okay? This is almost exactly double the price of the Luna. We expected the T10 to beat the Luna in most categories. Double the price is a lot to ask. The problem comes when the T10 goes on sale, which is fairly often depending on where you look and what time you're looking. The T10 can be found pretty easily on different stores for as low as $50. And at that price, the T10 is going to win every time. It's got a better cable, it comes with a hard case, it has better overall sound and details. I think it's built slightly, nicer, even though it's also plastic. It looks worse, but it's overall better. But, okay, I don't like using MSRP for these comparisons because there's no real guarantee that the T10 will be $50 in your area or in your store when the time comes to buy. So if I had to sum all these up, in the realm of planars, I feel like the Luna beats absolutely everything that I have in the $45 to $60 range, specifically the PR2, the Rosefinch, and the Pandamon 2. Okay? In terms of non-planar IEMs, it's very similar to and trades blows with the Simgot EW200, which, like I said, is very highly regarded in this price range. And the only thing I think in this $45 to $60 price range that outright beats the Luna in every single way is the Artti T10. But this is normally priced at $75, and it has to be $50 in order to beat the Luna outright in terms of value. So while the Luna isn't perfect, I mean, no IEM under $40 is, okay? I think that it does everything pretty well. Even with its slight imperfections in the treble presentation and the cable, coming loose on me, I think it competes very well, not just with its peers, but with IEMs above its price range as well. So, really competitive IEM overall. Where does it end up on the Audio Amigo Arbitrary rating scale? Well, let's take stock real quick. I'm going to be evaluating it at $42 because I think that's honestly the best value considering the value that the dongle adds for $4. I already mentioned it absolutely smashes the other planars in the $40 price class in terms of tuning and listenability. The PR2 and the Rosefinch just don't have the mature tuning that this has. Maybe the original PR2 did, but again, you don't know what you're going to get with that one. Its only real competition in the price class, in my opinion, is the EW200. And that IEM has been praised by lots of reviewers for being, best in class, hitting above its price range in terms of detail and tuning. As I said earlier, the Luna isn't perfect. The sleeve on the cable is coming loose and continues to slide off every time I plug it into a desktop amp. The treble has some wonkiness to it, but it's not so much that it outright ruins the replay. Some folks are going to say that this is lacking detail and resolution, but honestly, when I was playing my high-quality tracks, I noticed all the little details that I usually notice in some very busy, very technical tracks. And to me, at this price, that's more than enough technical prowess to be a good value, especially at this price. I really like this set. I think it looks good. I think it sounds good. I think it's a good value, especially with that dongle. I'm going to go ahead and put this in This is Brilliant, because I do think this is legitimately brilliant. The only thing, like I said, that I think straight up beats this in every category is the Artti T10. But this needs a 33% off sale minimum to be in this price range. And I can't count that against the Luna here. My arbitrary list is at MSRP. Overall, I think SGOR did really well here. I think if they had thrown in a carry case or a pouch, maybe fixed the cable and evened out that treble a little bit, this would be easily in you should buy this territory. All right, so do I recommend these? Yes, I do. These earn a recommendation from me, especially when you factor in the price of the dongle. Yes, the PR2 and the Rosefinch can be had on sale for $35 to $30. And yeah, the T10 right now on AliExpress is between $55 and $65, depending on what store you look at and what day it is. But sales are fickle. And like I said, they vary by location. Some people have to pay more tax, some people have to pay more VAT, and not everyone will be able to get the T10 for $50. And for that reason, I still think the Luna is a great buy at $42, especially for budget buyers that are maybe looking to get their first planar. It doesn't have as much of the treble bite or spiciness as some of the other trebles or other planars have. And yeah, it's a little harder to drive than most IEMs, but that's part of the reason why I consider the dongle add-on to be such good value. $4 extra, and you can listen to this on your phone, laptop, tablet, whatever. The dongle will handle the power delivery. It's built decently solid. It looks great. It sounds good. If you're on a tight budget and want to try a planar, this should be it over the PR2 and the Rosefinch. If you're looking for a well-executed V-shaped sound signature with good technical performance and fast, articulate, accurate bass on a budget, this is it. I will also say, if we're talking about sales, the Luna hasn't even gone on sale yet. Okay, every other IEM here has lost a decent amount of its MSRP when it goes on sale. The Luna hasn't gone on sale yet. Imagine picking one of these up for $35 or less on 11/11. That would be an absolutely awesome way to try out your first planar. But that's going to do it for me today. This was my first ever SGOR product, and honestly, pretty early on in my listening tests, I was pretty surprised by how good it was for the money. After I gave it my full review treatment, I actually went out and ordered the other two SGOR IEMs just to experience them. I don't know much about the brand, but I think the Luna here is a fantastic first impression, and I'm excited to try out the Adonis and the Venus. Let's see what they can do with a hybrid and a single DD. But as always, I really appreciate all of your support. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews, and I'll catch y'all next time.